Right? Okay, good. So, yeah, I was talking to Sean about what we could talk about and stuff on Friday, and I said, there's so many interesting developments, and I said, okay, let's talk about this whole situation that we find ourselves in. So, my my title of my talk is Take Advantage of Canada, A, and of course, yes, this situation has changed to the better since the September 1st, and I'm going to go more into detail. Oops. So just to mention, my presentation is just for educational purposes only. It doesn't replace the legal text of legislation, standards, or guidance documents. It's my personal opinions, and I'm a subject matter expert in the medical device regulations, but I'm certainly not a custom tariff lawyer, customs broker, import specialist, and so on and so forth. I just want to make that clear for everybody. Just quick presentation of my firm. We support MedTech companies in regulatory affairs, quality management, audits, engineering, clinical evaluations, investigations, and we bring together a network of employees and partners with 20 plus years of work experience in the MedTech area. And our motto is supporting expediting market access and the success of you and your medical device. So to me, who the heck am I? I'm a Canadian and also Swiss, and the managing director of MedTech Experts since 2016. I've worked internationally in a quality management environment for over 30 years. I've had different varying roles, as you can see, also varying expertise as well. And as a Canadian, I got all my education actually in Canada. So I have a Master of Science in Biomedical Engineering from the University of Calgary and a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. And I've been living in Switzerland since 1998, so you sort of frame this whole presentation. So why I want to talk about this topic? Well, we have tariffs that have been imposed by the United States. There's a lot of countries that are struggling with the circumstances right now. In my particular case, because I'm in Switzerland, Swiss manufacturers are scared. Some are even actually holding back their stock. And, based on a lot of meetings I've gone to, there's lots of concern and we don't know what to do. Yeah, that was always the statement in different meetings that I've gone to. I thought to myself, there's got to be another way. So I just want to put out the question in the crowd. Who is affected by this tariff situation? Is anybody noticing changes in projects or situations that they want to share? Or is everything hunky-dory and wonderful?
I personally have noticed and have gotten comments from many, many people that the uncertainty around the tariffs and many other things simultaneously has led to a market slowdown and a delay in projects by many, many companies. And they're saying, well, maybe Q3, well, maybe Q4, well, maybe Q1 of next year. And it's affecting, I think, a lot of the people on this call in terms of being consultants, being service providers to the medtech industry. That's where I see the biggest slowdown is in the tangentially related businesses. Any thoughts, comments from anyone else?
Yeah, I've had the same. I've got a client in the that does haptic glove tech for disabled people. So it's not really a full-blown medical device, but they're working with what I suppose it is with heart patients, right? People that had stroke. They've rerouted and redesigned the entire global supply chain to not finish the goods in China, just get components and restructured the entire manufacturing or assembly process, if you would. And they're bringing that actually and trying to assemble them. They're a startup, so the volumes are not high. They're trying to actually do it in the US and Florida. And they're not having a good time. So they bring in pieces and they're not bringing in the whole product and trying to, and actually they're routing them through the European country. So China to Europe, Europe to the US to get different set of taxes and then assembly in the US. and a non-medical device company made a product made in India for the tariffs. I'm actually opened up a 3PL for them in Mexico and Guadalajara. So I'm doing a lot of work in the tariff space, global supply chains.
Anyone else?
Yeah, we've we had a pre-sub meeting with the FDA in 2024, but right now we've completely deprioritized the U.S. market. We got the nice thing is we got a lot of the things to focus on, but and we're not dependent on that. But it's there's a phrase ends with show. I can't remember the first part of it, but I
Don't go there.
no.
Thank you. Anyone else care to comment? Okay.
Oh, hey, this is Maya. Yeah, we're certainly seeing some much higher duties and taxes to have to pay. So our headquarters is located in Denmark, and our products are made in Denmark, and then we ship them over here. And yeah, it's a lot more than it used to be. So yeah, it's definitely. I mean, we're starting to look into possibly producing here in the U.S. as well. I guess partly to. I guess get around or avoid that the tariff issue, and also just for for ease and yeah, quicker shipping. But that's it's kind of a big project to get started, and it might take a little while. So yeah.
Right. And with the uncertainty as to how this is going to shake out, I think that a lot of companies are like, well, I don't want to make that huge investment just to see all this reversed in a month. So that's kind of the situation. Stephanie, you want to continue?
Yeah. Oh, can I say something?
Yeah.
Sure.
Who is this?
So, as you know, we are Devo Medical. We're representing, over 140 foreign manufacturing company. We're doing their importation for the US. So I'm well placed to know what's going on right now because we've been dealing with this since the beginning. I think it's not a right idea to to start manufacturing in the US because, as you said, it could change in 1 month. With the new election, the midterm, it could change the power also. So it means that maybe the president will have less power in the year and a half with the new midterm election. So we tell our customer, don't panic, let's wait and see for now. But most of them, what they did, they shipped more product before the tariff hits. So we have 2 warehouses in Miami. So we have, for us, that was a good thing because, we can charge more because they have more product. One of the big issue is that when people try to say, oh, we're going to reduce the transfer price to the distributor, so you're going to offset that 10% or the 15% or the 20%. Well, this is illegal. So you cannot do that. If custom caught you doing this, they could fine you. So don't do that. You could do it if you had a written document that says that before that, the tariff hits, you had that agreement between the manufacturing company and the distributor to reduce by 10%. But be very, very careful because if they see that, that discount equal the tariff, it's illegal. So don't do that. And we on 148 customer, I say probably maybe only 5 of them decided to hold back and wait. Most of them, they just continue to do their business. They're eating up, the 10, 15% because they have enough margin there, to do it, knowing that it could change also. And you need to be in good contact with a good custom broker in the US. Because that's how you get your right information. Because even if the president says something, it doesn't mean it's going to go in effect right away. It could take weeks, before Customs and Border Protection get the information and transfer that, to make it effective.
Can we move on with the presentation and then circle back to discussion towards the end? I want to make sure that she gets time to present her idea, okay? Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Okay, so I have a next question. Does anybody know what the tariff rate is for Switzerland coming to the United States? I think it's an interesting question because when I went around in the internet, there was a whole bunch of different rates. Does anybody know? I'm sure Stefan knows. Sure he knows, but just everybody else.
I think it's north of 30%.
Okay, I'll give you the answer right now. So here we go. Oh no. So we have a 29% Trump tariff on there. And you can sort of see a comparison with Canada at the time that this was actually published on CNBC. So yeah, so we're reeling from this tariff situation, yeah?
Why is it so high for Switzerland? I don't understand.
Maybe he's frustrated that he's not getting, I don't know, maybe he's frustrated that he can't eat Swiss chocolate anymore. I don't know. Who knows?
That may be the best answer so far
Okay,
to
well,
explain the logic. So
Yeah, but I want to explain to you why it's so important for Switzerland here. The United States is our biggest export destination, and I didn't actually know that until it was published. Yeah, so I think that's really quite interesting. But on the same regard, Swiss companies are also world leaders in U.S. investment. We're such a small country, but we provide a lot of investment into the United States. That's something that we should maybe consider in the background as well as we go forward here. And a lot of people are saying, well, we should use this as a bargaining chip. You know, Switzerland should use this as a bargaining chip. Are some of the Swiss politicians are saying at the moment. But anyways, that's politics. Let's keep going here. Okay, so I was discussing this with Sean. You know, we got to just throw out all the solutions, open up the discussion, see what we can do. And you know, I looked at Canada, U.S. Free trade, right? The situation is that there is a free trade agreement that was written a few years ago that enables cross-border trade of goods with select medical devices which have a certificate of origin, which would qualify for 0% tariffs. So most of the statements within the free trade agreement, I'm just going to use free trade agreement to represent the CUSMA and the USMA. It's actually the same agreement. It just has a USA name and a Canadian name to it. Those things have been reestablished since September 1st, 2025. And the discussion of easing tariffs between Canada and the US is ongoing because US is the primary partner for Canada. So it's important. So the qualification for preferential tariff treatment, they have to qualify for the rules of origin. The U.S. importers have to claim this tariff preference, and they have to do it with a certificate at the time of claim. The goods also have to be accompanied by this certificate of origin, which is required according to the free trade agreement. And just a summary of sort of a step to arrive at that is you first have to find out how your device or product qualifies. You first have to find out the HS code, and that is a harmonized coding system for products around the world. You have to determine if the product meets the rules of origin. You have to compile the certificate of origin, provide it to the importer, and you have to be ready that it's going to be verified. You need to also keep records for at least 6 years after exporting it. So everything that's associated with your certificate of origin should be kept. So what is a certificate of origin? Who's familiar with the concept? And what is the definition of certificate of origin for medical devices? Nobody? Okay, I'll continue. Internationally, there's no harmonized definition of certificate of origin, but it is fundamental in determining the duties and charges that are applicable to imported goods on both sides of the border. And of course, these free trade agreements, I forgot to mention, also include Mexico, but I'm just concentrating on the US and Canada. And each good is classified, as I said, prior to these HS codes. And using the HS codes, you find out if it has, what is the qualification that is required to call it an originating good. So I'm just going to show you some examples of how to find those codes. I just took dental implants, went into the Canadian tariff finder. There's also US as well, which you can look at. I left a link on these next 2 slides. And I decided to go with dental implants. And this is the kind of code that comes up. And you can give this code in and then find out what the situation is. So that's just a blow up of what you saw on the previous screen. So it says it's tariff free, and I'll go into that later. What do you have to do in order that it's duty free? And the analogous information you also find on the USA site, as you see on the web link below. You can look at that after the presentation. So you can also, if you don't believe what you saw on the US site and on the Canadian site, you can give in the same HS code on an international site. And as you see here, I apologize, it's small font. I couldn't get it any bigger. It says it's 0%, but of course there's conditions stipulated with it. It has to have a certificate of origin, yeah? It has to qualify for one. So conditions for 0% tariff. Now, I don't want to say it's for all medical devices. I just found it for some, this following definition. And this is sort of the definition of what has to exist in order for it to qualify. I don't want to go into how these things are defined, like the regional value content, net cost. All these definitions are freely available for you to look up. And of course, it's not just easy like this, yeah. There's also applicable requirements associated with it. There's a whole, the free trade agreement is rather a lengthy document, and there's a lot of conditions and a lot of considerations that you have to take into account. And that's why I say also, for certainty, you should really consult the experts, maybe get an advanced ruling on it, and find out if it qualifies for the rules of origin, and also determining how to market as well. So this is just, I copied out the text, yeah, associated with the dental implants, which I previously showed you. And as I said, the definitions you can find here, if you want to consult that after the presentation. So if you want to write a certificate of origin for this free trade agreement, these are the things that you have to specify. Now, there is no template for this, but there's just these required elements that have to be defined on that. And it has to accompany the good as well. And they don't specify with what it has to accompany. It could also accompany an invoice as well. I'm not going to read through it. You can take a look at it after the presentation meeting today. Considerations, there's lots of considerations. And I just took a little bit of a snapshot of what you need to consider, right? You need to really see and check and double check if it's really qualifies as an originating product, right? And you need to determine its market. Also, as I said, maybe consider doing an advanced ruling, right? With the USCBP. It reduces the risks of delays, disputes, extra duties paid at the border. Gives buyers peace of mind, of course, and they can claim a preferential tariff rate more with confidence, more with confidence. That's at least what's reported on the Canadian site with regards to this free trade agreement. But you also have to consider that the importer has a lot of obligations that have to be considered. So yeah, I just took one of them, right? So, you get into trouble if this is not the case, right? I just marked in blue as an example. And this is why it's really important to consider an importer with experience with medical devices. Yeah, so that he makes sure that he doesn't lose the originating good status of the good, right? Because you want to have 0% tariffs. You don't want to have fines or other problems of paperwork or extra documentation. So just on to the next topic. Just Canada as itself, right? We're really open for business. I can say that as a Canadian. There's a number of free trade agreements. There's also agreements with sharing technology between different countries. And the government of Canada is very actively involved in free trade negotiations with other countries. They also do some trade fairs. They go around the world doing trade fairs. What also vouches for the Canadian environment is that the new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, it was the 8th governor of Bank of Canada and the 120th governor of the Bank of England. So he's very familiar with commercial goods passing through financial situations, financial institutions. And I think he's not going to do a misstep like someone who wouldn't be so deeply involved. And of course, the professional organizations for medical devices are also supporting a 0% tariff environment. That helps the whole process along.
I understand that AdvaMed lobbied pretty heavily on behalf of this 0% tariff for
Yeah.
medical devices. Is that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Have they really? I'm not
Yes,
sure.
they have. They have. They joined together with MedTech Canada, and they really had a group. There was actually a presentation at one of the congressional hearings, I think about a year ago, or yeah, when Trump came in, I think at the beginning, about February. There's actually, I think you can go onto YouTube and you can see how one of the main guys, top level management of that Medical Device Association, gave a presentation and said how important it was. I don't remember the date, Stefan, otherwise I'd tell you. But they did. They really publicly made it known that it's not a good situation to have tariffs on medical devices. Anyways, other selling points for Canada. There's a lot of public guidances for business. It's really business friendly. There's also, Canada's in a good political position as a member of G7. It's a very, I mean, I always call it multicultural and diverse population. This also enables clinical investigations that are done in Canada to be, the data to be used in other places around the world. And what I also really treasure is the business-friendly conditions of Health Canada. Health Canada is really actively involved. They were at the MedTech Canada meeting this year, and we're actively involved in presenting the positions and discussing with a lot of stakeholders how to improve the system. And for me, it's one institution, one interpretation, harmonized procedures, interpretation of regulation. That makes it really much easier than the European system with many, many interpretations of regulation, and we're still interpreting. It hasn't stopped. The other thing is that Health Canada is a member of the IMDRF, and that means that they also recognize the MDSAP certificate to prove QMS compliance. And they use IMDRF for Alliance Vigilance Reporting Codes and also essential principles. What's also I find really nice is that if they don't make a regulatory decision about the manufacturer establishing license within 120 calendar days, that the person who's applied gets a 25% credit on the licensing fee. And that would be nice in Europe because some of the applications are going, 12, 18 months, 24 months. It's kind of ridiculous. But anyways. Just a short summary of what the IMDRF represents. They're really looking at harmonization and convergence of the regulation internationally. And there are success stories, right, with IMDRF. They have vigilance AE terminology that has not even been adapted by the EU. They have their MDSAP program supporting QMS compliance. They have essential principles. And what I like the most is the reliance. And the reliance is where you acknowledge or recognize the other countries' regulation for medical devices. So, for example, Canada recognizes, the FDA, and it shortens up the process and the cost associated with getting the medical device onto the market. And within 2 weeks, there's going to be a meeting of the IMDF again, and it's taking place in Sapporo, Japan. And I'm lucky enough I'm going to be able to participate. So just give a little bit overview of the IMDRF members. And so if, you know, getting medical devices onto market, if you're one of these countries and you want to get onto one of the other countries, you have an expedited market access, which you can really take advantage of. Okay, I'm going a little bit away from Canada now. I'm just looking at other possibilities. Open up the discussion here. As I said, this free trade agreement between the United States and Canada is not just between these two countries, it's also with Mexico. And they also have a certificate of origin, similar to what I showed you before. As someone mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we need to consider maybe supply chains and reorganizing them. And I guess that has been confirmed by one of the participants. And of course, the politics behind the country has to also be considered. You know, how is it a country that the U.S. prefers or doesn't prefer? China is not really the best place to manufacture the medical device and bring it to the United States. There's, of course, other free trade agreements the U.S. has that might be interesting to consider the whole supply chain process. Of course, the product can also fall under the CARNET. That's where you temporarily take a product into the U.S. market, maybe for a Congress or meeting, or the Nairobi Protocol, which I'll get in later. Of course, you can always submit a request for clarification on the HS code, or if it qualifies for the originating definition.
Stephanie,
Yeah.
Edward has his hand up.
Oh, okay.
Edward, did you
Yeah.
want to say something?
Yeah, I didn't want to disturb your flow, but real quick before we get into all these other ones, have you got an explanation of the time that it would take to do this Canadian route that you're talking about? Just out of curiosity. And the other question I have is, again, like for our little company, we don't have FDA approval yet, so I'm presuming that all those things are require that these are products that already exist and are no longer going into the market. So the FDA thing I know would be a separate thing, but I presume you're talking about stuff that's already approved for sale into the US, right?
Is it approved
Yeah.
elsewhere?
Yeah, also approved elsewhere. So medical devices that are on the market in other markets around the world, like if I go back to these countries here, right? If I go to Australia, I can send this to you after the meeting. If you go to Australia, for example, they recognize the FDA, they recognize the EU, for example, and they show you what they still have to look at in order to get your medical device to market. But it speeds things up and it makes it actually a lot cheaper, right? So it's not just isolated to the US market access. If you have market access in any of these other countries, you come into the market quicker in the countries that are here in blue, because they coordinate and acknowledge the medical device regulations of the other country to a certain extent. Not a full extent, but to a certain extent.
I would love to line up a call with you after this, and because I don't want to
Sure.
monopolize everything. So that's
Sure.
quite interesting to learn. Okay.
Yeah, sure. And it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen about this whole tariff situation. So I'll be in Sapporo in Japan in 2 weeks' time. I'll just go back here. So, is that good? Is there anybody else holding their hand up, Sean? I didn't see that before, so. Okay. I'm just going to go into, I was at the last one, I was talking about the Nairobi Protocol, and these are products for handicapped people. So blind, permanent, chronic, physically, mentally handicapped. These are duty-free according to the Nairobi Protocol. I left you a web site that you can look up with regards to these products to get more information. There are exceptions, though, to this possibility, and that is if a person has an acute or transient disability. So if something goes away, it's not permanent. Eyeglasses, dentures, cosmetics don't fall underneath this. Therapeutic diagnostic articles as well, and medicine and drugs. So I just left you a few websites to take a look at what the tariff situation is, the rules of origin between the countries. As I said, this is not a simple thing. The free trade agreement is very, very lengthy. There's lots of stipulations, lots of conditions, lots of requirements of importers and what they have to fulfill and what they should not be doing. Yeah. You know, if an importer does something wrong, it could be that you lose your 0% tariff situation or you get fines on top. So it's, as I said at the very beginning of my talk, I'm not an expert in importing. Yeah. So as I said, you can make a request on classification rules, and this is the address. We have to sum it all up and say, hey, it's a very fluid situation. It's not over till. I'll let you fill out the blanks here. And this is sort of a capture of some of the news articles recently. So we don't know what's going on. We just have to hold on to our hats, try to find solutions, have active discussions like we have here today, find solutions. There's a lot of real know-how in this talk today, a lot of senior people, and I'm sure we can help each other out to try to find a solution to the problem. And I'd like to thank you.